Oh, look at that little fishy right there. I'm guessing he's trying to able to break out from that water, but I could assuming he does have his fin issues. Hey, what's up, ladies and gentlemen? Sorry for a little bit of attentions right there. I am Joy here, and I'm from the likes of the Maxi Toys videos. And ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to more Let's Play of Kirby and the Amazing Mirror for the Game Boy Advance. So last time we actually did manage to completely done with the forms of Area 1, but the forms of Rainbow Road to able to actually just to double check on every single areas throughout in this game or throughout in this particular Area 1 and discover how the fact that we've actually 100% through everything in Rainbow Road. And today for this episode, folks, is the fact that we're going to be moving on to Area 3, or World 3 I should say, but in forms of Cabbage Cavern. So even then though, yeah, that could be something related to, like, food world related, once like how it does in the forms of, you know, Kirby's Adventure slash Kirby Nightmare in Dreamland for the Game Boy Advance, as far as you guys already know. Well, some of them are timed, like, but in forms of Grape Garden, and especially noticeable with the forms of Yogurt Yard, Orange Ocean, and especially noticeable in Vegetable Valley, Ice Cream Island, Butter Building, and you know the rest. So, anyway though, today was actually in forms of the 22nd of June 2018, so today, that Mario Tennis Aces has just released today. For the rest of the world anyway, which is kind of surprising, because unlike any forms of, you know, in previous Nintendo consoles, most notably Nintendo 64, well actually let's head back into the NES days, like the NES or Nintendo Entertainment System, or Super Nintendo Entertainment System, Nintendo 64, Nintendo GameCube, Nintendo Wii, Nintendo Wii U, and especially noticeable with the forms of some of these handhelds as well, like the forms of Game Boy, Game Boy Color, Game Boy Advance, and Nintendo DS and Nintendo 3DS. Normally, unlike in those Nintendo consoles, they always have to be released on different days between each of the regions, but this time around though, in some of these Switch titles, seem to somehow manage to release those games throughout the exact same day as each other. Well, there's only one exception, and that was the forms of, you know, back during last year, that during Japan's release of the forms of Mario and Rabbids Kingdom Battle, they somehow have to wait on that game until at the very beginning of 2018, which is pretty understandable because they need to able to actually sort out the voice actor in the forms of the actual beginning portion of the game in Japanese instead of like just English or any other languages in Europe and all that stuff. So that makes it the reason why how the fact that they have to wait until 2018 back in the day for Mario and Rabbids Kingdom Battle for the Nintendo Switch is released. So even though that everything else will be just as it used to be. So speaking of Mario and Rabbids Kingdom Battles, now we've only got ourselves, oh by the way, we've got ourselves our next music sheet right there, by simply just able to actually destroy one of those star blocks, if you those of you might as well able to be curious to see what's inside in that chest. So yeah, you get the idea. So yeah, the actual level design in the forms of the Cabbage Cavern, as far as I'm aware for that, I've already established that for this before. I think Kirby and the Amazing Mirror, though, to me is the weakest because of its level design itself. But again, I just really think that Cabbage Cavern has way too many spikes and way too many enemies that it's so hard to dodge sometimes. And even especially noticeable how the fact that it's really hard to predict for those just in time. Because of that though, you might end up getting yourselves in a bigger bad risk as far as I'm aware for this little kinds of situations like this. So, because yeah, there's lots of enemies that you cannot dodge because they are way too fast to react to in time. Especially noticeable how the fact that they sometimes really trying to be able to be quite stingy when it comes to able to become like really well, it's not so much of a I don't know. So anyways though, speaking of Mario and Rabbids Kingdom Battle for the Nintendo Switch, well, we've only got ourselves like, I would say about 4 days slash 3 days left, for those of you actually already bought the season pass on back in during about a year ago, well, almost a year ago as a matter of fact. That Donkey Kong Adventure were about to be its release and during that time for DLC piece. So even then though, until when that time comes, then I can finally get to be going back into Mario and Rabbids Kingdom Battle again, because I know it's been a long while since I've actually touched that game again, because I was way too busy on Super Mario Odyssey, and especially noticeable with the forms of you know, Kirby Star Allies and Donkey Kong Country Tropical Freeze for the Nintendo Switch. And even recently that today I've managed to pick up myself Mario Tennis Aces, which for I've played it, is actually not that bad. It's way more better than the likes of Mario Tennis Ultra Smash because of how the fact that, well, I'm glad that the tournament mode makes a return, but however though, I will admit though right away though, is the fact that the tournament mode in Mario Tennis Aces this time around though is a little bit too lackluster this time around though, to me though, because all it gets is just basically just 3 cups and that's it. And also, not to mention, but you know how the fact that back in Mario Tennis Ultra Smash that you have to play through that exact same courts, but with just in a different skins, but in forms of the regular stadium itself. That could be same applies for the tournament mode in Mario Tennis Aces. That's the only disappointing aspect in the forms of that game itself, in my opinion, though. But apart from that, though, for what I've played it, it's actually not that bad. Well, again, still way better than it's still way better than its predecessor in the forms of Mario Tennis Ultra Smash because, you know, more variety in courts, and especially noticeable with some of these gimmicks about these courts themselves. And even especially noticeable, I've heard they're going to be bringing us into ourselves a huge giant character roster thanks to due to the actual, well, tournament events, but in forms of the actual online tournament events, which even then, I'll give the game credits due. To be able to actually add something like new playable characters after the actual tournament itself is finished. So even then, I really appreciate it with this all kinds of stuff like this. Of course, I'm not going to spoil the game for you guys, although kind of thing about it though is that ironically I know is that much like in the forms of you know, The Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild and Super Mario Odyssey, and especially noticeable in Kirby Star Allies, and even especially noticeable with the forms of well, let's just say by the forms of Mario and Rabbids Kingdom Battle as well. About the fact of the matter is that they've already spoiled the actual final boss of the game already, which even then I'm not going to discuss about on that too much, because as far as I'm aware though, yeah, I barely just started up the game already, because as a result of that kinds of stuff, well, I'm recently going to be starting through, there goes the first death. Screw you, Crash, enemy. Screw you. Or in this case, I'm assuming that's a bomber from, for that specific enemy over there, which I don't know exactly what their name is, which, again, I do apologize for that addition there. So yeah, folks, here's our first death of the playthrough. I know, as you expected for any other Let's Plays out there, I understand that, but the thing is about this is the fact that much like any forms of, you know, Kirby Dream Land 3 and Kirby 64 The Crystal Shards, and even especially noticeable with Kirby Nightmare in Dreamland on the Game Boy Advance, how the fact that once again there's no block buttons able to actually block projectiles or dodge any of those, or blocking certain enemy attacks and all that stuff, which even though, as we expected, because of how the limitations of the forms of the Game Boy Advance itself, or perhaps it's because they're trying to able to build up the exact same games engine, just like in the forms of both Kirby Nightmare in Dreamland, and also before, you know, Kirby Mouse Attack / Kirby Squeak Squad, for those of you who lived in North America. So, yeah, you get the idea what that specific discussions to make through. So, actually, before I get into this, however, though, I need to go ahead and deal with this particular boxer again. But this time around, though, in a small arena. So, yeah, this is what happens if you get caught by him. He'll basically try to able to do a little bit of a clap attack, which, even though that might be seems the case, though, regrettably, though, which, that's a pretty bad idea for able to actually deal with this guy, without doubt. I gotta say that much, because even though that, first of all, he moves way too fast at times, and even then, though, if you do not pay attention to that, potential movements whatsoever, then you're expecting you're gonna get killed a lot for this particular guy. Although it's entirely optional, though, for you if you want to deal with him, which is kind of a good thing, because it's all about exploration, as far as I've mentioned this before. Unlike any forms of the, any other Metroid series of games, how the fact that it's mandatory in order to actually finish the main game if you manage to deal with these boss battles, pretty much. So, speaking of that addition of how the fact that, you know, you get the idea with that solution there. Now, about the fact that I recently mentioned about this ever since yesterday, about the forms of Captain Toad Treasure Tracker for both Nintendo Switch and Nintendo 3DS, and I've already mentioned about the fact that I've tried out the demo of those two versions of the game. I say that The 3DS version runs at 30 frames per second, which is definitely 100% true. Unlike in a Nintendo Switch version, that it runs very, very well, like 60 frames per second and 1080p support, which I do appreciate about this kinds of stuff like this. Although it plays exactly like the exact same game of how it does it on the Wii U version, but you know, except the noticeable difference is though, is the fact that we're going to be playing the entirety of the game with the Joy-Cons this time around though, slash the Switch Pro controller, which I do appreciate it, because with this Switch Pro controller, and you gotta be kidding me because of that stupid little blooper fish, just always catch me off guard there. Yeah, thanks a lot, you stupid little blooper, for that little fishy, little cheap looking, you know. Hey. So yeah, generally, Cabbage Cavern is actually one of my least favorite worlds in the game. It's not as hard as the later worlds in this game though, but it just feels kind of frustrating whenever you're trying to do like platforming as such. And even especially noticeable with these enemies themselves, they're always trying to throw you off at times. Mainly those little blimpers, and especially noticeable with these little unpredictable movements or the actual unpredictable moments there. So yeah, you get the idea with this little departments right there. So to speak, for this little kinds of stuff like that, for that nature. So, anyways though, and as far as for my plannings, but in forms of Captain Toad Treasure Tracker redo Let's Play, the fact of the matter is I'm gonna be we're gonna be doing most accurately, we're gonna be tackling through the Switch version of the game. However, I'm gonna do something a little bit more updated than that. It's the fact that, you know, I've mentioned this before, in the forms of how the fact in the oh gosh, we got ourselves. Oh, I hate these guys too. These are blockings. Basically, if you ever think about trying to able to get rid of those little normal regular star blocks, no problem, but turns out there's going to be a little bit of a new enemy that's actually introduced by the forms of those block kings, which basically, if you accidentally just manage to able to actually accidentally trying to kill that star block, but turns out that you have to purposely get rid of that immediately, and I've missed that, so shoot. In fact, this treasure is so hard to get though, because you have to be so fast before you're able to actually just activate the switch, but also, I suggest you do that, because that way it should be able to help you out, and that way we get ourselves on next musical sheets. So, in fact, we've almost there to able to actually get to that bigger section there, and because of that though, we can able to actually get ourselves our map in the forms of the Cabbage Cavern, so that way, backtracking is not that much of an issue until when we get to World 7, because as far as I'm aware though, World 7 is definitely one of my least favorite worlds in the entire game, but this one is easily one of my second least favorite worlds in the game in my opinion though, just because, although it's not too difficult or anything like that, it just feels kind of frustrating whenever you're trying to do like platforming and such, and there goes another death right there. That was actually 3 deaths in a row in this video. That's only because of how the fact that, well, I just don't know why my sword attack just sometimes doesn't move at all. But that's totally my fault for that department there, so I do apologize for that, so. Yeah, let's try this again, shall we? But even then, that's as far as you might think it is when it comes to gaming skill tactics to be like that. So, hopefully in a bit on the future worlds in this game, hopefully my skills will be slightly better, but not as definite as far as I've hoped it will be. But anyway, we got ourselves a piece of meat, and we need to go back before we're able to do anything, and that way we need to able to actually destroy one of those bomb blocks, like this one for instance. Then we can able to actually now finally gonna open up the bigger chest, which as you expected, it will contain a bigger map. Or in this case, a better view of the forms of the Cabbage Cavern map. So even then, that word should able to get our job done. And there we go. Now we can actually see the entire map of Cabbage Cavern. So we've only missed out one area over there, which that's fine because I'll get to that as sooner or later. But we've only got ourselves 5 sections to go, but in forms of this part in particular, including the likes of the second boss of the game, which, yeah, there aren't any boss battles, although there are plenty of boss battles alike in this game in particular, but as far as trying to able to encounter the boss fights, there aren't as many as I hope it will be. Well, at least as far as I'm majorly concerned with this though, but even I know that there are still some ton of bosses in the game, but there's going to be uniquer than that, which, you know, once again the boss fights were the highlights, which, you know, yeah, we'll get to that point until when we get to the future worlds. So for now on though, we got ourselves another of those gold minigame types, and we right off the bat though, we've got 2 lives back. Well, I was hoping I can get 1 more left, and so I've managed to get back into 21 1-ups, but oh well, I'm might as well able to find an extra 1-up in certain treasures and stuff like that for that nature. So now we're done with that, and now let's head back into the Cabbage Cavern for, you know, to continue the majority of the forms of, you know, the rest of the world. See, Fernando, that way we can able to actually, hopefully we'll get to that spot after we deal with the boss fight. See, Fernando, might as well do the second boss fight first, before we're able to actually go ahead and finish up with the forms of Area 3. So, you know, you get the idea. As far as I'm aware, though, Area 3 slash Cabbage Cavern, or World 3, is not as big as I was expecting it will be, unlike any forms of Area 1 Rainbow Route. So, if that's the case, regrettably, then yeah, you get the idea with that solution there, so. And, oh yeah, this is an area that we do definitely need to get ourselves the stone copy ability, because, normally, if you manage to try to get yourselves a hammer, which is entirely up to you, you can either get a hammer or the stone, but ultimately, I was always trying to go after the stone, just for the sake of, like, trying to able to actually activate the stomp, which even though not only does it will activate the actual secret area like this, for instance, but also I need to hit over there, so that way there's going to be a treasure chest there, so far I didn't call as many of those Kirby so far, well, until we get to like, World 5 or something like that, because that way it will get us a lot of puzzle solving coming up, so even though, yeah. So yeah, you do definitely need to get yourselves a stone ability, and as a result, we get ourselves our next skin for Kirby's different colors. So that's pretty worth mentioning though, and I believe that takes care of that area, so now we need to go and go all the way back down, or in this case go all the way down and able to actually not only to discover the forms of the different parts of the areas or different sections of the actual Cabbage Cavern, but also by the forms of the actual second boss fight in the game, which should be not much of an issue there. Because yeah, I'm almost right near to it though, so even now that, hopefully we can get ourselves done and you know, trying to able to actually get it finished and stuff like that for that nature. So yeah, that's what I can really say about this for the most part. Yeah, the branching pathways can be very annoying to people, because every time when you're able to actually just completely skip bypassing those sequences like this, even especially noticeable, you cannot able to actually go back into actually clipping for those little, you know, climbing for the actual platforms themselves. I mean, you have to go for this stuff. I mean, you can't just like go back down whenever you're trying to go to. Especially if you want to backtrack to the previous parts of the world, so that way you can able to go to the hub world and able to actually get into the different portions of the levels, and you can able to actually use the transporting warp room and to be able to actually go back to the hub world, and it's just a lot of busy work, and even then I was expecting to see how this will turn out to be. I could wish if this game will actually have some sort of like a traditional system where you're able to do a stage selection and able to actually pick it from the menus, or just a simple world map, and that's why I'm really trying to able to actually just point things out right away, but that's just how I think it is. But even then, there's not my major complaints about it, but even then I was still think that's just one of those little things, that how the fact that you know, you might easily get yourself lost if you don't have your map with you, or even if you have a hard time trying to find a map to begin with, but still, it's incredibly, like, you know, it's nothing too much of a bad amount of its own merits, but it's just one of those things that you might as well even to get lost track of yourself sometimes. Anyways, we got Bonkers again, so hopefully we can able to actually just go ahead and finish his job done, and we can hopefully just try to finish him off, and let's go ahead and swap out Hammer now, so that way we can able to blow down here, and seems more accurately with actually approaching to the second boss in the game, because we're actually on the second boss in this game, because after all that the first boss in this game was actually forms of you know, King Golem. So let's see what this second boss is actually introducing to ourselves. Oh, what do you know, is that familiar mole? Or to be more accurately, his name is Molly, which even then, this is before when Kirby Melt's attack will get ourselves a little bit of a female counterpart of the Molly boss, but we'll get to that until next month though, don't worry. So yeah, Molly himself is basically very simple. You just have to we need to keep on attacking him. That depends on what holes he's actually going to be going into. Naturally though, he only goes through like 6 holes to dig through. and then every time you actually see that little ground is about to be crumbling, this means you actually come out to the hole, and then there's your chance to able to actually just strike on him. So, you know, not that bad of a boss fight though. It's kind of like a whack-a-mole type of syndrome boss fight. So even then though, that makes the job done. And even then though, that Molly is essentially a male mole type of boss thing like this. But again, until we get to like Kirby Mouse Attack, we might actually come across into Molly's sister of any sort. But then again, we'll get to that during next month though. So, of course, we still have not entirely finishing up with the forms of Cabbage Cavern just yet though, because we've only got one more area left before we're able to completely done with everything. And that way, we should able to get our jobs done. So even then though, well, for the majority of Area 3. So, now we just need to go to the right and able to go onto the lower level. And then we could able to actually get ourselves the, I'm assuming the next secret switch or the actual warp switch. So even then though, that way it'll get the job done. And hopefully we'll get ourselves, this world completed in no time. So aside from that though, again, there's not much else to discuss aside from that, you know, there are some differences on how the fact that I should probably point things out right away for this point, folks. I would appreciate how the fact that I'm also able to do a little bit of an update to able to do a redo Let's Play of Captain Toad Treasure Tracker. Not only do I able to actually go ahead and do the forms of most accurately the Nintendo Switch versions most focus on, but the majority of some of these extra stuff, I'm also able to actually record some of these footages from the Wii U version just because of Super Mario 3D World actually has the Wii U stages from that version instead of the Switch or the 3DS versions because, you know, it's been replaced as the Super Mario Odyssey levels because, you know, that's just how it is for me though. That's just simple and how it is. So as though there's the secret switch there, and if you go all the way to the right on the exact same room like I was in, this way will actually leads us to the next world, which conservatively I might as well do that in a later time after World 5. So that way I might as well able to do that. So, with that being said in mind, folks, we got the endings off at this point right there. I know this video is super short, but hopefully these videos are going to be much more longer than in the future. So anyways, join me next time on Let's Play Kirby and the Amazing Mirror for the Game Boy Advance. It's the fact that we're going to be hit off to World 4 or Area 4, which should be Mustard Mountain next. So see you guys then. Later, fellas.